So good night. Wednesday night here, Wednesday evening, 6:30, 6:35. Anyway, welcome to the session. We were saying that we were on the last class today, very close to the last class. And if we don't finish it, just like maybe one page of work remain for Sunday. Sunday coming, we want to more focus on questions and answers, and at least the theory part of it is finished today. We all spoke about a technique that I've decided to use, kind of weird technique for me, which is the textbook, but we do this in our degree classes sometime. I think I mentioned to you, like, especially when we know then that this is a written exam and you needed the bulk of information. We didn't need to bypass it, you really needed. So um, three-quarter into the class, I think we switched teaching techniques and went straight into the notes anyway, right? So land transport, we're going to look at today. Oil and gas products such as petrol are classified as dangerous goods. Actually, that is the answer right here. I mean, like, that's what we're going to look at. It doesn't really have anything more than that. Transport of dangerous goods is regulated by national law and international agreement. The rules depending on the mode of transport. The rules are generally aligned with recommendation issued by the United Nations. And I mean, I think these key information is actually what we're going to do, right? We have again, did I hit the record button? Yes, I did, right? The UN system assigned a class, a description, and a four-digit number to dangerous goods. Dangerous goods are carried in road tankers needed to be marked and placarded with a system of hazard, diamond, orange plate, UN number, and hazard code. Precautions must be observed when loading and unloading dangerous goods from tankers against ignition sources. I really think these points are really the same thing that you have to look at in the notes. Road vehicle movement need to be controlled and thought given to traffic routes on site and the protection of vulnerable vessels and bonds. Tanker represents an attractive target for terrorist security measures such as varying the route, but the route being planned, sensible precautions. Um, Rail transport of dangerous goods has similar provision to those of road transport, right? So, in a way, that is exactly what we're going to look at. What is a tanker? Sometimes referred to as fixed tanks or road tank vehicles. The tanker is permanently fixed to the vehicle chassis. Tanker containers, sometimes called ISO tanks or portable tanks, which we don't really call them like that here, are held in box steel framework. The framework is locked to the vehicle chassis but can be unlocked from the vehicle. This is particularly suited to transport of tanks between, say, road, vehicle, and train, or road, vehicle, and ship, right? So, what if they'd ever asked you what is a tanker? I'm not sure, right? I mean, 'cause we need to cover everything. So road tankers, I'm trying to see if I can explain this one to you. All right. Okay, so I'll explain it first because I think if you read it, you wouldn't kind of get it either, right? But I'll read it afterwards, right? So in the UK, well, we would know that the UK, Kingdom, of course, is influenced by other entities around it, right? And one of them is the United Nations. The United Nations have some codes then, right, for the transport of dangerous goods. And those kind of codes, when I say codes, I don't know if you know them, exactly the same signage. If you're all familiar with safety signs today, like warning signs, which we are, right? Mandatory signs, fire signs. A lot of those signs actually came out, not actually from England, but from the United Nations, right? So what has happened here is like England and is actually following the United Nations here, right? And what they did, so you'll see here, the United Nations, right? So transport of dangerous goods has long been subject to at least influenced by international agreements. The current rules derive from a system of model regulations developed by the United Nations. These are published as the United Nations recommendation in the transport of dangerous goods. So it's a recommendation, and what England did, they went and they created a regulation from it. So you find that like an international recommendation that would actually be ratified in a local law, if you want to think of it like that. Right? So like something that is global will now become your own law. And that's what you see on this side here. So if you look at this one here, so the United Nations recommendations and stuff was taken in here, right, on the right hand side of this here, and they actually have a law for it. They actually have a European agreement, and they actually have a UK law for it. So two things again. Not to sure if you understand all of it, right? But again, you can think of the UN and the United Nations, here the United Nations, sorry, and the European Union as two external entities, but what they do that influence countries, right? Like Trinidad, like the fact that we know the warning sign today, or you know probably the sign for toxic or corrosive, is because of the United Nations, this one here, right? But there's also the European Union, and the European Union also would kind of try to embody like international law, they themselves being an international organization, right? Countries are free now to make their own law, and that's what you see here. England made their own law, right? So, for example, the UK domestic regulation mean they embody the international standards as their own law, and the law they have is the carriage of dangerous goods and use of transportable pressure equipment regulation 2009. These allow the use of modified markings and placarding of road tankers. So that's what the law was trying to say. Like, well, they're trying to say more than that, but they're trying to say like you must be responsible for your dangerous goods then, right? And that they must know what is transported, what is the safety measure, who is the owner of the dangerous goods, what is the harm to the environment. And all of that was embodied in national law or England national law under this regulation here. So that's what you see here. So that's how I explain it because this one is kind of lower-ish. There's a lot of lower things happening here, right? The European international, standards, the United Nations. But then finally, England made their own law for it here, carriage of dangerous goods and use of transportable pressure equipment regulation. The law doesn't say anything hard, it just kind of say who is responsible for that, like first aid measures, what you're transporting, what is emergency procedures, all of those things is like what the law is trying to say. So if anybody transporting dangerous goods, flammable substances, you need to know what it is then, right? And that is what the law is saying. And some of it, of course, is embodied in a sign or signage, which you call a placard on the tanker itself. Some of it is documentation that is carried along with the tankers, as well, right? So if you could see here, so the UN recommendation, they have it in something called the Orange Book, the Manual of Tests and Criteria, and the ADR. ADR is actually French for that same law. If you come back up here, you'll see it. If you see ADR, ADR is like ADR doesn't mean anything here. ADR is actually just French for this one up here, right? So ADR is a French word then for European Agreement concerning the international carriage of dangerous goods by road. The French phrase for that, is simplified ADR. So you can get a free copy of that. All of it is those saying that these are dangerous goods. So what is a dangerous goods? Dangerous goods are substances and articles containing them that have been tested and assigned against agreed criteria and found to be potentially dangerous or hazardous when carried. They are placed in a recognized category or classes. This process is called classification. And dangerous goods are assigned to the following UN classes depending on the predominant hazard. So explosive substances and articles, class 1, gases, class 2, flammable liquids, 3, flammable solids, self-reactive substances like sodium, 4.1, substances liable to spontaneous combust, also like sodium, or anything in the periodic table around that, sodium, magnesium, probably magnesium, right? But maybe magnesium would have been 4.1 to be honest. Spontaneously combusting is probably sodium, right? Substances in contact with water emit flammable gases, 4.3. So this is the UN classification. So then these are classed as dangerous substances then, right? In other words, to make life simple, what is a dangerous substance? A substance that is explosive. I just call in some words, right? So you can pinpoint it. What is a dangerous substance? A substance that is explosive, oxidizing, toxic, radioactive, corrosive. That's not a hard thing to remember, right? And you need to remember now is that the UN gave it a class. I don't know if you had to remember one of these classes, but I don't think you have to. Just know that the number will go on the placard. right? Or the signer, like what it is, or the paperwork that is being transported. So if, I guess it's gonna cross borders, Scotland and England, and it may be, like a truck-driven, tanker-driven substance, but they will say, well, what are you carrying? And if it's like acid, it's going to be, class 8 corrosive substances, right? So that number is going to be in the paperwork then, right? So then if you want to remember, like coming out of this, then you can remember about 4 things to be on um the placard, or 4 things you can say coming out of the regulations for dangerous goods, right? So you can talk about the identity of the substance. I can give it the 4 one time, the identity of it, toxic, corrosive. Then I can give you all 4 1 time, but we'll take our time and scheme it through now, right? Like right now, we could just see 2, right? So the identity of the substance, toxic, corrosive, and then the class, the UN class, right? The rest of them on the other side, if you want, I'll kind of get to the other side and you'll see them, right? So you see here the UN number, right? The UN number, put us up to the top here, right? So a 4-digit short code assigned to each entry in the list of dangerous goods, which is usually organized in UN numerical order. Example, petrol or gasoline or motor spirits is assigned the UN number 1203. The number have no systemic meaning, so don't try to figure out what 1203 means. It's just the number that they assigned to it in themselves, except that anything starting with 0 is in class 1 or an explosive. So if you watch here, like you'll see 1, you'll see 0, right? So 0 is in class 1. So if you see 0 in the number, then that is an explosive substance. I don't think you're going to get that refined nature of exam, like they give you a number and say what it is. No, you can just say that on the placard, you have a UN number, right? You could learn how much you want to learn, right? Packaging group, and we just saw this there, packaging group, because if it's petrol, if it's a toxic substance, right? So an attempt to categorize substances into degrees of danger. There have been 3 such groups, and each is conveniently written in Roman numerals. Packaging group 1 is the highest danger, well, I or II is medium danger, 3 is low danger, right? So different UN classes has different criteria for this assignment. Petrol UN 1203 is assigned packaging group 2. So if you want to learn that, so in addition to the classes, they have a packaging group. So much of truth here, but maybe you should just pick out 4, right? So that is like 3 good ones. Classes, that's 4 right there. Now. Classes, identity, UN number, packaging group, right? But it goes on, right? You pick your 4 now, right? Hazard identification number, a 2 or 3-digit code which attempts to communicate the nature and intensity of the hazard. For example, UN 1203 petrol is associated with the hazard identification number 33, right? And packaging group 2. So look at my thing you're learning there, right? Note that this substance is related to the UN class. Petrol is in group, well, here they have class 3, right? So that would be class 3, which will be up here, isn't it, right? Class 3. But I think you can probably learn the overall heading, right? Emergency action code, like what to do in the event of an emergency, all of that is on the sign. A code used in the UK, instead of the hazard identification number, it communicates emergency information to firefighters. Placarding, the display of large hazard warning diamonds, but that is what the UN did. They put all the signs in a diamond, which contain graphic communicating or communicates graphically the hazardous nature of the load to the UN hazard classes into the dangerous goods, which dangerous good fall. Um, uh, you'd see one just now. I mean, if you don't know them, the thing I'm telling you is that you know them. You have seen them. If you have gone to the gas station, the petrol station, or you look at the back of a tanker, you would see it. You'll see these kind of diamond. You'll see like a sign in the back of these trucks and there's a diamond, right? But they have different ones. They have, like I said, for warning, toxic, flammable, oxidizing, highly flammable. That's what you probably see to the back of most trucks anyway. Irritant, right? And so you'll see those, you'll see the diamond, you'll see the numbers and all of those things. You can see it have a UN hazard class, right? Markings, when used in relation to vehicle and tanks, is the display of an orange reflectorized rectangular plate. The exact nature of these depend on the type of vehicle and the type or the amount of load, right? It have one lower down, so I might as well could probably show you that one. I could have one right there, right? So here we have the emergency action code, the UN number, telephone number. This is the UN classification here I was telling you about. Is a diamond. That actually means they're highly flammable, class 3. The fire means flammable, and when you underline it, it means highly flammable, right? This other one here, this is also one of the UN numbers. This means hazardous to the environment. It's like a dying tree and a dying fish, right? So if you could pull out four, that'd be nice. And have them here again. This whole thing is called a HazChem panel. But the answer is here. The answer to the question is like maybe what does the UN recommend, or maybe what does the UK regulation say for the transport of dangerous goods, and like what is a criteria, right? All of this is an attempt to keep you safe. This is the emergency action code, which is the action to take in the event of an emergency. The UN number, which is an attempt to identify what it is. If you pay attention to this, what it is, right? Like class 0 is, explosive. The UN, a lot of things is on the sign, right? So there's a lot of bodies on it. Then watch it. The emergency action code is from the UK. Watch it there. For UK domestic transport, there is the emergency action code. So the sign is influenced by a lot of bodies then, international bodies, right? So it have the UK emergency action code, but then it have the UN number. Then this diamond is also from the UN. This diamond is also from the UN, right? Telephone number. Now it have more things on the placard. If anybody have time to look it up, it have like the manufacturer. It's supposed to have the owner. Like where did this come from, right? In fact, look at here. OG Products Limited. That's the owner. That is where that thing came from. In the event of a spill, they know who to contact then. OG Products Limited. Talk to me a bit and tell me if you understand. Tell me if you have some time to read this and get. I mean, I think I did a fair job over there in breaking it down for you, right? I don't think it's 8 things they will ask you for, right? However, if they do ask 8, though, you could actually make up some others, like damage to the environment, right? Things like emergency action to take, right? All of those things then is actually on the placard. And if it's not on the placard, it's on the documents called consignment note. You'll see it up here, right? Once something is being transported, you have to carry paperwork. The paperwork is actually called consignment documents, right? Consignment procedures, marking and labeling of packaging, marking and placarding of vehicles and tanks, documentation. Like if you were stopped by border control at a scene, you already stopped by border control here in the Caribbean. Come to think of it, that's probably something OSHA should be doing. Remember, we do move hazardous materials here in Trinidad, right? But I've never seen OSHA stop anybody to say what it is. And because, by the way, this is lower cross, and they must have the paperwork, they must have what they carry, the quantity they carry, the first aid measures, the firefighting measures, the MSDS, all of those documentation, where it came from, all of that now, where would it finally be disposed of, right? Not in the Beetham, not in Claxton Bay, that kind of thing now, right? Like we don't really see Ocean, like EMA doing that, but that is what this documentation is. If you all have ever seen any other shows on whatever you look at now, you can't say cable anymore, right? It's more or less say Netflix or apps now, right? But if you've seen any, like, have you ever seen, like those series, Ice Road Truckers? There's a famous one on History Channel. Ice Road Truckers. I used to look at it, right? And they have lots of border control. I've actually seen certain episodes like where they actually seize the contents of the truck because they didn't have the consignment procedures. They didn't have the like documents on them, and border control would actually seize that truck, which is a loss for the company then, right? Big loss, big loss. You'll get back your truck, but you won't get back the products and stuff inside of it, right? They would actually seize all of that, right? So land transport, folks, you all get it a bit, talk to me a bit, you all get it, that it actually have more. It actually have like you could ask, where is the risk assessment? Like the risk assessment will form part of the documentation. What is your emergency action to take in the event of a spill, right? It have more stuff than what this is saying here then, right? But hopefully, instructions in writing in case of an emergency, hopefully you understand it. And if you understand it, if they ask you you can make up 4 documents, like what is the environmental harm? How do we clean up a spill? Who is the owner of the asset? Those kind of things now, right? Is there a risk assessment attached? So you can actually make up the documents in the event that you were asked something like that. For now, though, it's just they're just kind of focusing on what the law is saying in terms of the placarding. But remember, the idea of the placard is not the placard. The idea of the placard is to keep the thing safe now. So we know what it is, how much it is, how harmful it is to the environment, who is the owner of the asset, etc. Keep that in mind. The owner of the signage or the reason for the signage is not the signage itself, but to kind of help out in the event of an emergency, right? So land transport, construction and testing of packaging tanks, etc. So where's the inspection record for the vehicle, right? Condition of carriage, loading, unloading and handling, prohibition of smoking, precaution against electrostatic discharge, the vehicle crew, are they trained? So there's so much of stuff, folks. And if you could get this, there's so much of stuff here that you could go to talk on. Where is the driver? Simple thing, driver's license, but when last was the driver trained, so training records, all of those things become part of your consignment documents, right? Equipment, operation, documentation, example, specific training of crew, supervision of vehicles can't get easier than that. I hope you're understanding it so that you understand it more than what we look at here, right? Construction and approval of vehicles such as tankers or the road tankers in that sense, then, right? So I think you understand it a bit. This is just talking about the influence again of the UN and the UK and how they came up with the panel or the placard, which is now called a HAZCAM panel. We have a separate course on this that you should not do. I just telling you. I have a separate course on this, which is I should remember the name, and I taught it up to last year, right? Hazard communication, right? Hazard communication, where we go through like trading in a company, we have them go for their chemicals and stuff and try to identify what it is based on the HAZCAM panel, right? All right, driver training. So do I need to say this? This is obvious. The heading is the answer. The driver need to be trained. The law, right? Remember, the law is the UK, but they're using the French phrase ADR, require drivers of tankers carrying dangerous goods starting a vocational course of instructions. And that's why they will ask at the border control. Like we mightn't ask for that here. You may just ask for the license, but in the UK, remember ADR is law. If you want, I could go back up and show you. It's just they're using the French phrase now to make it simple. Why would they want to make it simple? Because the name of the law is very long. Watch it. For example, in the UK, domestic regulation in the law, carriage of dangerous goods and use of transportable pressure equipment regulation 2009, also referred to as ADR when they use the French phrase for it, right? So every time instead of saying the carriage of dangerous goods and use of transportable pressure equipment regulation 2009, they would just say the French phrase for it, right? But what does the law say? The law is saying nothing that they all don't know. The driver is supposed to be trained. Only thing in the UK, they would have, remember this law is from England, right? Not on Trinidad. They'll have like training records there. They may have like a training card or something coming out of that, right? Sit and externally assess examination for the classes of goods being carried. The course covers some general aspects of dangerous good transportation, but for tanker drivers would also cover specific issues such as vehicle behavior, load movement, or surge. I wish I had time to go into that. But liquid does actually affect the center of gravity of your vehicle when you apply the brakes then, right? Specific vehicle requirement, fill in and discharge to get rid of static electricity, especially specific rules, approval certificates, marking, placarding. So definitely an answer. What goes into a placard, what is a requirement of the UK regulation for the transport of dangerous goods? Definitely training, right? And all the other things that go with it, risk assessments, how are you going to take care of a spill, care of the environment. Folks, come in a bit and tell me if you understand that you all have your cameras off and you all are all quiet. So I don't know who I'm talking to here. You all understand it? Or I'm talking to myself?
Oh, we understand it? Well, I don't understand it. So,
Yeah, it's not that hard. We just, it's like the law is new, but I mean, the law new to you all. Our degree students would have covered that law already, though. But it's nothing hard, the accent, all right? And remember, you all don't have no hard question in it. You have a 8 mark question, you know, they don't tend to ask too much of low things, but I just saying, should they ask according to the ADR, right? Like what is the requirement on the employer? Just take it from a common sense approach, right? Just remember something here and take it from that approach. And maybe how do you control? Well, in a way, the signage is the control because you're kind of thinking about what is your emergency action to take, what numbers you must contact the owner of the asset. Do they have a spill control plan? It's just kind of like that then, right? Um, Loading and unloading arrangements. Drivers of tankers must be fully informed of the dangers of the materials carried and the emergency action that needs to be taken if there is a spill. The driver. The law, ADR, French phrase, right, require drivers to carry instructions in writing, more commonly known as transport emergency card, the TREM card, right? This to me forms a bigger diploma question, but I mean, for you all, it's just like a 4 mark question, right? So this is a 4-page instruction, which amongst other things describe the nature of the hazardous load. Is it toxic, flammable, hazardous, and the action to be taken in the event of the emergency. TREM card is not really a card, it's 4 pages, right? But must be kept in the vehicle cab so that it can be easily located by the emergency services in the event of an accident. And that is what I think was missing in that episode of the show I was talking about ice road truckers. They didn't have the documents, right? They were trying, if you ever see ice road truckers, they're trying to get, through the ice, through these frozen lakes and stuff in a hurry, and they probably forgot it, and truck was seized, and all the goods and stuff in it was seized as well, right? It doesn't have to be that hard too. I mean, all this is saying the driver have to know what to do. But here, fire extinguisher should be carried on all vehicles. That is nothing hard for you to remember, right? If substances are flammable or explosive, earth connection should be used during loading and unloading to prevent the possibility of static spark. So the law not saying nothing that you all know. Driver should be trained, know what to do, have a fire extinguisher, have proper documentation, right? So when you read it and you step back from it night, nothing hard to learn anyway, or to think of 4 of those things anyway, right? Well, I think we covered this already, right? Things about protection, plant against a vehicle striking the plant. Well, maybe in this case, if you want a vehicle, what you need is like a barrier, right? A bond wall. You need some kind of crash barriers, and that would actually kind of prevent a vehicle from most of the time reversing onto your tanks or onto your vessels or whatever have you, right? Um, yesterday, yesterday, right? Um, right in Duncan Village here. I'm on the road, right? I saw this Prado, big vehicle, trying to reverse out into the road like this, right? Well, coming out with my finger like this one, right? So I stopped. I'm a kind of person like that, and I know sometimes nobody else will stop, so I stopped. And then the other side now they had a 4x4 pickup reversing, and these two drivers did not look back, decided to reverse, and was like, I looking at this thing and I thinking these people cannot be this, well, not even what I want to say in the record, but these people can't be this responsible, this irresponsible where you reverse and then you're not looking back. Yes, your vehicle may have a camera in it, but I mean, so the camera not giving you a warning. So these two big vehicles, a Prado and a 4x4 reversing, they almost, when I realized they wasn't looking, I started to blow horn endlessly, and then that kind of signal them. They came at that point, and I was like in disbelief that I was like, so if I wasn't there, I would have just reversed and hit into each other. Should have left them though, but I didn't. I'm a good person, right? I try to do the wrong thing sometimes, but I just end up doing the right thing at the end of the day, right? And just saying, like reversing is a hazard all by itself, right? A lot of accidents in companies where vehicles like low boys, trailers, tankers, whenever something happens, is some sort of jackknife maneuver, if you know what that is, right? A jackknife maneuver, something that somebody don't know what they're doing and they reverse and they hit into a tank or something like that, right? So it's often good just to have a spotter or in these two drivers on the public road here, just to kind of make sure that you listen to your. I think those vehicles have cameras and some sort of reverse sensor, but like they were not looking, they were just going at it, right? Yeah. All right. So topic focus here. I think we can go straight into this. So I think that, again, the topic focus here is actually saying what everything is, right? So filling road tankers involve the risk of fires and explosion if a flammable mixture of fuel and air can be generated. Consequently, control measures need to be in place to prevent the formation of flammable mixtures of fuel and air. Those control measures may just be good ventilation, right? Vapor system, vapor return system to reduce flammable vapor release, adequate tank space to prevent spillage. Well, I mean, that's like preventing overfilling, right? True overfilling, look at right there, right? So level monitors and warning alarms, once they work properly, nitrogen blanketing of road tankers and the bulk storage tank, not always done, because that's a bit technical, right? Monitoring equipment to detect leaks, that can be done from the tank and associated buried pipework. Strict operating procedures to prevent leaks and spills, control potential ignition sources, no smoking, zoning of the filling area, if you'll remember that, and if you'll remember zoning. Like zoning for gases is that if you were where the tanker is being filled or being offloaded, then you are classed as a zone 1 atmosphere. Sorry, zone 0, which is where you have flammable vapors, right? If you are close to the tanker, which is maybe in this, if I'm thinking about a gas station here, well, then you are classed as a zone 1. If you're away from the petrol station, like across the road, you are classed as zone 2. All right. Yeah, everybody's tired, right? Reduce the risk of ignition by static electricity by controlling a pump rate, avoiding splash filling. Look, all of that here, we covered those things already. Avoiding the use of filters or installing filters far enough upstream of discharge point to allow adequate time for any static generator to leak away. That's a weird one. Use of anti-static footwear and clothing, they actually do have that. Earthing up pipelines, vehicles, and tanks, they do that as well. Dealing with emergencies, fire extinguishers, sand, yes, they actually do that as well. Or other absorbent materials to aid the clearing up of small leaks or spill. Yeah, sand is actually used, I guess in the oil field industry, they have the extinguishers. They also have something called a sand box that have actually sand in it, for fighting small fires anyway, right? So we have already considered method of filling tanks and their safety precautions, elementary, and their principle. And these principles apply to loading road tanker as well. Top filling can create splash. So we mentioned that before, avoid splash filling. Bottom filling through a closed system alleviates the problem of vapor escape, but relies on pressure venting and relief devices to function properly. Now, that's only if you overpressure the thing, right? Remember, these pressure relief devices would only activate if you overpressure by filling the tank then, right? So maybe you should have some kind of pressure level monitor gauge, or you should know your flow rate. You should know the capacity of your tank. They have ways of working this out. You should know the capacity of your tank, and then, based on your flow rate, what is going into the tank, how long it will take the tank to fill. And this is based on what you're filling, right? It could be gas or liquid, right? You should know those things anyway, right? But I say you, the company, I don't really mean you, right? I mean, the company should know, right? All right. Land transport, traffic management. I found this to be the easiest thing of all. And we almost finished. We just have this and that to go. We finished right here. So the course is finished here. So I could slow down now then. I mean, I was kind of trying to do what I could do. There's nothing hard here, right? And I covered the hard things for you all already. Traffic management on site. The principle of on site management of traffic include, I read it all because we have time, right? But not all, but the start of all, right? Minimize bends. junctions, steep gradients, and the need for reversing. Common sense, right? Traffic management. Pedestrian and vehicle segregation. Clearly designate areas for pedestrian walkways and crossing points. And probably have a hard barrier if you could. I mean, you can't put a hard barrier across a crossing point, right? But if the pedestrian walking along the where the vehicles are passing, then you should have like a barrier in the event of a vehicle getting out of control. Like a line in the ground cannot save somebody then. The line that says, pedestrians decide vehicles, that's it. The line cannot do anything. But if you have a barrier, like a chain barrier, it could probably reduce some of the impact, right? Clear signage, which as far as possible reflects standard road signage, warning of speed limits, obstructions, allowing width, height, etc. Right? Let me see. Well lit if necessary during out of hours, wide enough for the vehicles, and if not, consider one-way systems. Enforce speed limits, which is you need to have safety on site. Protect vulnerable plant with barriers. I just spoke about that. Design with plenty of space for offloading. Demountable tanks. Again, that is, I mean, just to be honest, that is if you have a chance to design, right? Sometimes your building has been adapted to, so you don't have your space you have there where you have, I mean, this is tankers, right? But you could think of barrels and whatever. Maybe just have the space. They can't really design anything in it. They could modify, but design is if you have, like you're building from scratch anyway, right? Dedicated road tanker offloading points with emergency facilities and environmental protection built in. Security access gate signing, so you know who is on site and control who enters the site. Perfectly said, have your cards, routes. It goes without saying that not all routes are suitable for vehicles, especially big ones. And like I said, if you are already on a facility and you got this new thing, you got this new tender, whatever, that trucks are now coming in into your site, right? So, such as tankers, hence I said the maneuver of the like jackknifing is not a nice maneuver. You have to know what it is you're doing, right? Some people do it really well. Some people do it and foul it up and hit into your gate and hit into your tanks and stuff, right? So, such as tankers transporting petroleum products, example, narrow roads, weak bridges. There is also the issue of security threats, terrorism, and theft. To the valuable load being carried, and it's possible use as a terrorist weapon. Consideration of the security of dangerous goods is a specific requirement of the UN recommendation and the English law that is represented here by the French phrase ADR. Routes should be planned to minimize such threats and obstructions, have security, have police, right? Security, I say police, but most companies that have their own security measures. It is not generally considered a good idea to use the same route each time. Predictability, however, although the route should be varied, it should be planned each time. The advantage being that if the vehicle goes off-road, it can be detected, especially with more commonly available vehicle tracking systems, right? Folks, there's nothing difficult here. And the last one, last but not least, rail, right? I know if you haven't been to the UK, well, we have old rails in Trinidad. There are some Caribbean countries still with rail, and I don't know if you all know that. There are some Caribbean countries still with rail. I mean, we still have our tunnels. You can still see the tunnels. We still have our tunnels. There's still the line, as we call it. People, the older people remember where the train line went, right? The line in Marbella, the line in St. Madeleine, right? The line right in San Fernando, for those of us who know where we call cross crossing where but like where the gas station was, those of us in San Fernando, right? That's actually a train station, crossing. It's a train crossing station. Now it's of course just all the roads, but as with the trains, of course, would have met and stopped in San Fernando, long ago. I wasn't that wrong. I just telling you. I mean, I'm not that I was there. I'm not that old. I'm just telling you all that. That's something like my father would always remember that and talk about that now. Crossing. If you wonder why it's called crossing San Fernando, right? that was where the trains cross anyway. But I have been to the UK, and some of us have been to the States as well. I really do want to go to San Francisco one day. San Francisco is a strange place. I love it. They have trains that run in the middle of the road with cars on both sides. And nice trains, not high speed trains, but nice, cool, decent sort of ride trains. England have high speed trains. Can't see nothing if you look out the window. The train is going that fast. Doesn't make sense. Look outside. All you just see is a blur, a light. But then they have nice trains. If you'll ever visit, well, because of the visa thing now, but you can get your visa. If ever in life you ever go to where Nibosh is, right? It's a nice train, nice train, not that fast anyway. They do have lots of train accidents, or had, should I say. There have actually been cases of people cross the train line, which is against the law in England and in all countries. You're not supposed to cross the train line. But if you understand where the train lines go, you'd understand why people cross it sometimes, right? Train lines run through the bush, then, if you want to call it that, what we call the bush or rural areas. Like you could get a train there, like from certain parts of London straight down to Leicester, or like straight from Leicester, to parts going to Scotland, and that's just hills and valleys. If you want to talk about it like that, just hills and valleys, right? So if you wonder, well, who does pass? Anybody could say who will pass through hills and valleys. Well, the answer is farmers, right? Shepherds, yes, it actually have shepherds still, right? I saw them, right? And you probably see them in the States and stuff too, farmers and shepherds and stuff. So, like, a train line is not fenced then through all the mountains, through all the valleys, right? A train line is not fenced. So, if, horses, sheep, right, they will cross that train line. Sometimes farmers cross it and stuff, right? So there is always that danger, but it's against the law to cross a train line. I don't know if anyone of you all travel. It's nice to see. Maybe when you do travel, it is nice to see. It's nice to see, like those of us in the Caribbean here, it's nice to see something that we don't see all the time. It's nice to see, that it looks like the traditional picture of what you think England may actually look like, right? Sheep and horse and thing. But they had to come out of London, right? Anyway, real transportation of petroleum product will involve tank cars and tank containers, but we don't do this in Trinidad here. Modal rules on transport of dangerous goods derive from the UN, and rail is no exception. In Europe, the implementation is called the Regulation Concerning the International Carriage of Dangerous Goods by Rail, or RID. Earlier, they discussed the ADR in England, requirement for road transport and dangerous goods in tankers. They are very similar risk for rail. So what they're saying, the same thing you want for what we covered is what they want for rail, right? Emergency action, what it is you're carrying, what is the contact number, what is the company, driver must be trained drivers, right? I think those routes have a driver. I'm trying to remember. Because some trains don't have drivers in England, they just run automatic. They're just a system, the matrix. It's just a system, like in London. So this is not really, I don't know if this, I guess this is for London, if because London, they must be bringing things in and out, fuel and stuff, right? But I don't know if I don't think they're gonna use, I'm not too sure if they're using the same kind of train. I mean, they probably would but it's not a passenger train then. Probably would be, like a dangerous goods train. But some of those things don't have a driver, just to let you know. It's just a system. 10:15, the train shows up. 10:18, the train leaves. I think in England I mean, because like I was there recently, like every 5 minutes is a train, but there's no driver. It's just a system, right? But I just saying that if there was a driver, then the driver of the train must be trained, right? All right, I think let me do this out and we'll stop, right? So as a result, the requirements are very similar. The general layout and thrust of the two modal regulatory text being alike, the one from the UN and the one from England, right? there are some obvious operational differences, and there are greater restrictions than for road, and especially when transporting dangerous goods through long tunnels, such as the Channel Tunnel, right? And with that said, I actually didn't thought we would have finished, right? With that said, that's the end of the oil and gas course, right? I guess I'll pick it up from here. In fact, I want to go home. My mother is still stuck in the office. I'll be happy if we finish now, and I would be able to leave. And because Trinidad ain't too safe. I mean, San Fernando kind of safe-ish, but it's not good to be stuck here anyway, right? We'll pick this up on Sunday, right? Well, past papers now, right? To pass the IOG exam, you must obtain a minimum of 45 marks, the total marks available. Be prepared. It may be some time since you took your last exam. Yes, it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It was the pandemic. Remember, success in an exam depends mainly on revision, exam technique. And we share all on this on Sunday, right? Revision tips, use this handbook. I think that's a good idea. Use your notes, right? I always like the idea of getting the information from the corner, right? Not all courses are just like I said, some courses we could have cut corners, but I felt as if we didn't need to cut corners in this one, knowing that it was up to you, right? Let me call Aaron and try to get out of here, right? Akash is here today. I know not much of us here, right? If I could stop the sharing, I kind of make out your names. And I could let you all go as well too, right? So we just have, we have about 9 persons on it. I didn't realize there's so much of you all. Um, okay, so we have Akash, yeah? We have Chanel Ryan,
Present.
yeah, Rashad Thompson. It's sad, the course actually finished. Passing here on
Present.
Sunday. What I mean, like, we might have no
Yeah.
more oil and gas again, you know? Yeah, thanks, Rashad. Jessica Alfred,
Present.
Nigel O'Neill Smart,
Present.
Nigel, Crystal Thomas is not here. Alicia, I'll try to put them up, like I said, on YouTube. Those who missed it, right? Christopher Gobin. I spoke to him today, but like he's not here. Alicia Kine is here. Alim is not here. Stephen was here. Raven is not here. I think I made out Devon. Yeah, I saw
I hear.
Devon. And I didn't see Kerwin, right?
Akash.
Yes, Akash is here. I'm looking at the names. I can see who's here, right? I know I'm looking at your name. You can't see what I'm looking at, but I kind of opened the screen with the names on it now. So that was I was able to see all. Folks,
No
enjoy the
problem.
rest of your night. I will see you all
just-
back on Sunday for a Passy Pass
just-
session. Yeah?
Just before you leave, you had mentioned you sent an email or a text about the payment. I didn't see any emails or texts coming today.
Hang on, just now.
It's to me again or email too.
Yeah, but we had no, it wasn't an email, it was just like a text.
Oh,
So
okay.
Yeah, well, I didn't get either or.
why? Yeah, I wonder why. Well, Stephen, I know you are different, but Akash, I gotta check up and see why.
Yeah.
So what the coordinator, I don't even see what I have in my hand, right? I don't wanna the coordinator give me the totals, but like she didn't the sheet I have here actually doesn't have Akash name on it. Right? So I'll follow up with this for you tomorrow, right?
All right. Thanks.
And I'll let you know. Yeah. But thanks for saying that though, because at least she didn't do your total then, Akash. Stephen, you are different, right? Remember, we'll talk a bit afterwards, maybe another day, Stephen. But yeah, thanks for saying that, Akash, right? I really don't see your name on the list here. Okay. All right, folks, all the best. I'll see you all back on Sunday. Bye.